This is the latest. Iran is now warning the UK. They have a brand new prime minister, and they've given us a little bit of backup here. But now Iran says that they should not be allowing, the UK should not allow U.S. bombers to use the UK bases. And that's coming from the Iranian media. That new Prime Minister, Andy Burnham, reportedly continuing a policy to let the U.S. use the bases for defensive strikes. You know that President Trump has been very unhappy with the backup that we've seen from Europe, especially given that they use oil from the Strait and energy from the Strait in such massive quantities, but they're happy to sit back and let the United States take care of this issue. Meanwhile, a live look at oil prices. That's not good. Getting close to 90. $100 a barrel earlier, but has backed off a little bit after the attacks on Saudi oil tankers in the Red Sea by Iran-backed Houthis. So they're sort of firing up the Houthi arm of the proxies of Iran in a rather significant way lately as well. So former CIA covert operations officer Mike Baker is here with me live, at First 2 Chief International Correspondent Steve Harrigan in Tel Aviv, as the wires are crossing now that the Kuwaiti army says air defenses are currently intercepting Iranian hostile drone threats. Steve.
That's right, Martha. This is something we've seen now for the past 24 hours. Iran continuing to attack U.S. allies in the region, places where there are U.S. bases. Just seconds ago, Kuwait saying it's activated its air defenses. Earlier in the day, parts of Kuwait were hit. They were attacked by drones from Iran. No casualties in those attacks, but definitely some damage done. So Iran continues to reach out, to lash out against its neighbors in the region. In the meantime, the Revolutionary Guard is now threatening the United Kingdom, basically saying, because you have allowed the U.S. to use your air bases to launch B-1 bomber missions against Iran, that your bases now are legitimate military targets for Iran. The UK responded quickly, saying the UK stands ready 24/7 to defend itself. As far as that B-1 bomber goes, this is really a game changer. It carries 75,000 pounds of conventional weapons. They are huge. They don't need stealth features if you do control the sky, which is the case in much of Iran. They can be refueled in the air, and they can hit multiple targets on the same mission. So really a potent weapon now being used in the region. And it comes as oil has now topped $100 a barrel. This comes after Houthi terrorist rebels in Yemen managed to attack and strike 2 Saudi tankers in the Red Sea. By doing so, they've caused the price of oil to spike and also potentially raised a potential second front in this war. Martha, back to you.
Steve, thank you. Steve Harrigan in Tel Aviv. And with that, as promised, Mike Baker joins me here, former CIA covert operations officer, CEO of the Portman Square Group, and host of the President's Daily Brief podcast. Mike, where do you think this is? Thank you for being here, first of all. It's always good to see you. Where do you think this is going?
Well, it's not going to end anytime soon. I feel pretty confident in saying that. The problem is the Iranian regime has essentially come to a point that they've been thinking about for decades, which is an existential conflict with the U.S. And the regime, the leadership, believes that's where they are right now. So they pushed all their chips in, right? I know that the White House is saying, oh, they're desperate to make a deal. They keep talking to us about they want to make a deal. But we, meaning the U.S., aren't ready. Well, interestingly enough, the Iranian regime is saying the same thing about the U.S. So the Iranian regime is saying, well, the U.S. is desperate to make a deal, but we're not ready. So that kind of tells you there's no off-ramp just yet. And I think that the problem is that every time we engage in another strike, right, we get the same, it's like Groundhog Day. So we get the same response from the Iranian regime. And at the end of the day, unless this regime goes, and nobody in Washington wants to say regime change, right? So we've defined the mission as they'll never get a nuclear weapon. But that's kicking the can down the road, which every administration has done, right? So every time you say that and we've got to deal with them, right, you know that you're just putting lipstick on a pig, right? And you're saying, okay, the next administration can deal with this. So I think we have to define the mission as, if we want peace and stability, long-term opportunity for the people of Iran and that entire region and the U.S. national security interests, the regime has to go. But they hate to say that.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're saying this, because it's the elephant in the room.
Right.
It's the most obvious element of all of this, is that if you don't get rid of this leadership, which now really looks a lot more like a military leadership than anything else. The IRGC seems to be really running the show. And now they don't have to answer to the Ayatollah anymore, it appears, because the Ayatollah is quiet and we haven't seen him.
He's like the Claude Rains of Ayatollahs.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
He's made no appearance.
Exactly. So we haven't seen him since the February strikes. But that does feel like the reality. You need a catalyst shift. Either it's a massive attack that changes the dynamic, but your point is well taken, that we see this back and forth. You need a massive shift in military structure and strength, or removing another layer. We got 1 and 2.
It doesn't. You can keep removing layers, right? Again, they've thought about this since 1979, in a sense, right? I mean, they've been chanting death to America since then. They've been thinking about this and what this could look like. So you can take out another layer. It's like taking out leadership in a terrorist organization like Hamas or Hezbollah, which of course are funded and financed and trained by Iran. They've got a limitless pool of talent.
Plus, attacking them inspires some of the younger members.
It inspires the younger members.
They want to move up.
Right. So you're absolutely right when you say it's a military leadership. That's, by all credible intelligence, that's what we're looking at now. You're looking at the IRGC has hardened their leadership position. They've climbed to the top, and they've always been important, obviously. They've got their fingers in everything in that economy. But
every business, they have ownership in oil. They've got they've got their hands in every bit of the business.
Right.
And they don't care about the people of Iran.
Well, when you slaughter thousands and thousands of your own citizens, I think it kind of tells you where they sit. But so I think Mujtaba Khamenei is basically rubber stamping. If he's alive, he's basically just being presented with, okay, this is what we're going to do next.
How good do you think the intel is on him with your intel background? I mean, is he alive? Is he in another country? There was some indication of that earlier this week.
Yeah, Israeli intelligence was saying, we believe that he may have fled or they've moved him out of the country. The intelligence is very imperfect. Unfortunately, it's a little bit like our bomb damage assessments of Natanz and the other nuclear facilities. How much did we do? We didn't obliterate it, but what did we do? It's still hard to figure that out. Intel has always been a heavy lift for Iran. We've always relied heavily on
Israelis are pretty good at it.
They're very good, and we've relied on our liaison partners, the Gulf partners. You talked earlier about this idea that nobody's helping, right? We got to be a little careful about that, because the